Julie, do you want an agenda or a
Yes.
packet?
Pardon?
Do you want an agenda or I do have one packet printed? Do you want that? Okay.
I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have quorum yet?
Oh, we got one more minute, okay. I know, I always walk in on the minute.
You're
That's a
good.
joke
That
about
is
that
on
before.
time. You are still on time.
I think I have one, we need one more. Andy's online, so if you want to spread out your. So
We good?
we are, Greg.
I'll give you a minute to catch up. You have a much harder job.
Okay, so. We have 6. So
Yeah, good.
we're good to go.
Well, good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy 2023. Welcome to the January 5th Transit Advisory Committee for Mountain Line. We're going to call this meeting to order and jump right into roll call with Rhonda. Sounds like a TV show.
Roll call.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the TAC, Coconino County, Andy Bertelson.
Present.
Thank you. Coconino County Citizen Representative, Jillian Thomas.
Present.
Thank you. And her alternate, Carol Covington.
Present.
Thank you. City of Flagstaff, Greg Clifton.
Good morning.
Good morning. City of Flagstaff Citizen Representative Michelle James. I don't believe she'll be joining us today. Metro Plan, Dave Wessel.
Present.
Thank you. NAU, Aaron Stong here. Thank you. Our ASNAU student, Brendan Traxler. Traxler, thank you for correcting me on that. He is expected, but I have not seen him join yet. CCC, Kurt Stull.
Good morning, President.
Good morning. And our Economic Development Representative, Gail Jackson, is expected.
Here.
Oh, good morning, Gail. We also have Chris Beecher, our attorney, on the line.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. Before we move on to our next item, we want to take a moment and do a little recognition. Heather.
So today, thank you, Madam Chair. Today is Jillian's last meeting. So we just have a small token of appreciation. For those that don't know, Jillian served on our TAC for 9 years. I don't know what we will do without seeing you every month, but. Sorry. But wanted to express our gratitude for your time and your efforts and everything that you've brought to the TAC. And
Thank you.
you're a very important part of how we are today, and we thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Lovely.
It has been a pleasure. You've always had great input, and yes, really, it's been lovely.
I
Thank you.
have to tell you all, I've enjoyed you all very, very much. And I would love to continue, but one has to give up.
Change is good, right?
And change it, someone else coming with another perspective. And I'm so thrilled that Carol, whom I've met before, and we were talking about things, and she got the wheels rolling in my head about possible, and she worked with you on the TAC.
And I know Carol as well. She worked at me.
That's right. And I just had coffee with her one day and said, would you consider this? And she said, yes. So I'm thrilled that I'm not just leaving the space because we couldn't get me an alternate for so long, and that Carol is going to take up and bring very different expertise to me. But I've already seen her at a couple of meetings and she's helped you with where she's an expert.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
But you're not done yet. You have to get through this meeting.
Oh, lovely. Oh, he's got my name on it.
Oh.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. I have one little water bottle, but this will be marvelous. This will be wonderful. Thank you. So I've been envying people who've got these. And I look at mine and think, oh, I'd like one of those.
Yeah, there you go.
And you
Lovely.
looked ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is our safety minute with Sam Short.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. The January Safety Minute is regarding railroad track safety. The railroad tracks are a common sight in our community and in many cities across the country. Trains are responsible for many injuries and property damage incidents every single year, and Flagstaff is no exception. While incidents involving trains are severe, it is often the action of the other party that contributed to or caused the incident in the first place. The following are some general safety tips when around railroad tracks. Always look both ways prior to crossing the railroad tracks. Pay attention when near the railroad tracks. Do not wear headphones, use a cell phone, or anything else distracting while nearing or crossing the tracks. Never attempt to speed through a crossing to avoid an oncoming train or the crossing arms. Always obey the safety signals at railroad crossings. Never walk on railroad tracks unless you are at a designated crossing. Give trains plenty of space when they are near. An average train traveling at 55 miles per hour could travel up to a mile before stopping after the brakes are applied. Experts advise that a 30-car train hitting a car is the equivalent of a car striking an aluminum can. The odds are not in our favor. Please use these tips to help yourself stay safe near the railroad tracks. Thank you and welcome to the January Transit Advisory Committee meeting.
Thanks, Sam. Next is a call to the public. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak? Do not think so. Moving on, approval of the November 3rd TAC minutes. First, are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Give folks a minute to review that. If there are no questions or comments, can I get a motion to approve?
This is Dave Wessel, so moved.
Thanks, Dave. Can I get a second?
Gillian Thomas, I'll second.
Thank you, Jillian. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. The next item on our meeting is just a notation. The Stride Forward presentation will be presented to the board at their next meeting. Good luck with that. For those that don't remember, we had it last month, well, 2 months ago. Moving on to draft board agenda or our business agenda items. The first item is Kate Morley with regards to consider an updated letter to the city regarding Northern Arizona Healthcare's relocation. Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the TAC. I don't have a presentation nor a letter in your packet, if you noticed on this one, so just wanted to give you a quick verbal update. So about a year ago, we submitted a letter to City Council requesting that there be some sort of plan in place for how transit would serve the new FMC campus near Fort Tuthill, which we've talked about many times here at TAC and with the board. A lot of conversations have taken place over the last year, and so the letter that we sent at this point feels outdated. It doesn't reflect the latest conversations. We don't have a letter in front of you today because conversations continue to take place, and we want to write a letter that would represent the very latest conversations to date. So we are asking the board to consider submitting a new letter to the city. The board did submit the last letter. It was an action of the board to choose to do so. So we felt like it would need to be an action of the board to revise the letter as well. And that's really all I have for my presentation, though I will say Heather has had more recent conversations with Northern Arizona Healthcare herself, and if she wants to add on.
Sure, I just wanted to make sure that everyone here, the Transit Advisory Committee and then the Board of Directors knows we did attend City Council on December 6th and made public comment to confirm that really the conversations with Northern Arizona Healthcare have resulted in a decision that we are not going to partner for funding for transit, although they may provide funding, one-time type of funding. There's no commitment to regular or reoccurring funding, and therefore it's not considered a reliable funding source to introduce the transit service that we feel is best suited for this location and the services that are provided at that location. And so we provided that comment in public comment that we will pursue a transit tax increase that would require the voter approval in 2024. That tax would then pay for a new route to this location, as well as potentially other things that are in the Flagstaff in Motion 5-year transit plan that we've been working on. So our goal in this meeting with the board is to kind of have that same conversation and also provide them the opportunity to submit a letter to City Council to say the transit plan that we asked for a year ago is that we will accept any funding that NAH has available to give us on one-time basis, but the transit service will be contingent upon the voter approval of additional transit tax to pay for this program. So that is the transit plan, and Mountain Line will essentially not be part of future conversations. It's really about the city and the decision for rezoning, and that Mountain Line's goal and objective was to have a transit plan, and we have one. We feel like the public is crystal clear on that the service to the new location cannot be provided without a new funding source, and that our objective at this point is to ask the voters to consider that in 2024.
Jillian, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you go forward with a new tax, do you really want to have the new route with additional money wanted to enhance other routes? I'm seeing an issue as a voter. How do I vote for this when I want one, but I really think the hospital needs to take responsibility for the other? I mean, I just think.
Yes, thank you for the question. We internally have had conversations about how 2024 might look. There are a lot of steps we will need to complete, including engaging a citizen advisory committee that helps us determine what is the question or questions and what are the funding mechanisms attached to it. So I would go back to 2008. We went to the voters with 5 questions where the voters got to choose to extend the existing, pay for additional frequency on routes, pay for new routes, pay for capital hybrid vehicles, so that transition to hybrid, and then the Route 10 that serves NAU. Those were 5 separate questions that we asked the voters, so that the voters did have that more distinguished decision ability. It is potential that the CAC would say that is a recommendation we would again make to City Council, but ultimately the decision to ask a question or multiple questions in the amounts is dependent upon the City Council making that decision as we get closer to that 2024 election date. But I would anticipate, to your point, that we would be considering multiple questions, so as to be sure the public has that distinct decision-making. And one of my concerns is jeopardizing funding we need for other things in Flagstaff in Motion if it is all centered around NAH.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gail.
Hi, this question is for Heather. Heather, I'm just curious if there's any policy for new projects that come online or certain areas for developers and how much they need to contribute towards transportation, or is it every time it's a negotiation? How does that work?
Sure, I'll start and maybe ask Kate to chime in a little bit. To date, there is no public policy or a city ordinance supported by codes that would allow us to require a developer to provide transit funding. And so every time we see a project that has the potential to impact the public's need for transit, we are trying to submit comments and ask for transit funding to be a consideration, but there's nothing that would require a developer to commit to that at this point in time. I would only add that that is one of the things we are looking at. Back to the November joint meeting, we talked about the need for code and code amendments. And our team is working now on a project to really look at, should there be codes that we could recommend for the city to adopt that would ensure that transit as a project and transit funding are part of future developments. But currently there's no requirement. And so to your point, Gail, it is a negotiation on every project when we ask for transit, but we do try and ask for it in different capacities at every development. So living complexes, we ask for transit passes to be negotiated as part of that approval. We ask for right-of-way or capital for bus stops if they're developing on an existing route. We've asked for developers to pay for new routes. Timber Skies is one example years ago that we asked for funding for a new route, and now NAH is really a new route where we ask for funding. So each is a little different, but they are handled one by one. And I would just ask Kate to add anything she thinks I missed.
I think the only thing I would add is we submitted a grant in December to get some help with code amendments. And so we're hopeful that that will come through so that way it doesn't have to be a negotiation. And we also think that that provides transparency to developers about what the expectation will be. So hopefully well received all around.
Is there still time that any code change would impact the NAH project?
Unlikely because their applications are.
Right, it's so far along. Okay. And while I agree with Jillian that I think, personally, I think they should contribute to it. But at the end of the day, as a citizen, I need to get to the hospital. I need to use the bus. And I wouldn't want our citizens, our community being negatively impacted because NAH is not willing to contribute. So it's a very hard road to navigate. Using a little transit. Because right now, I mean, and actually based, you guys have your survey data, there's a fair population that use it for medical reasons. And so we wouldn't want to take that service away from folks. And so I would say use that as part of the marketing or conversation pieces to say, we know people use it for medical services. It's important to provide for the community, but it would be nice if NAH would contribute because it's a significant move. It's not a small thing. And compared to people's apartments where they choose to live, that's a personal, but this is a community, a place that the community goes to, right? So any other comments or questions?
I would just add that in the future, we look at some sort of funding source because it is a deterrent for future growth and future development. It's another added expense. And it's not an expense that's always defined. And so, yes, NAH is the first one into this area, but it's going to drive other growth. And for them to yes, maybe there should be some contribution, but for paying for it, paying for the entire thing, I think that's kind of been the model that we've had in the past with lots of different things when it comes to infrastructure. And so I think maybe a longer term, finding a better source might be the answer moving forward.
Is that the
Yes.
Okay, I can say that. Yeah.
Well, I just want to make a comment. My daughter lives by the hospital. And she said that the hospital often release people and they just wander around her neighborhood. And everyone in her neighborhood wonders where these released people, particularly homeless people who end up in ER, are going to wander around. And if there's no bus,
Right.
where are they going to go? Right now, they just wander around the neighborhoods. It's a very serious social problem in a way.
Other comments or questions on this topic? Hearing none. Next item is Busy here?
Thanks, Kate.
Oh, Kate's gonna step in for Busy. Flagstaff in motion, update community plan.
Great, thank you. I am going to do my best to sub in for Busy today, but I will say she really deserves all the credit on what you're gonna see in front of you today. She's worked very hard over the past 18 months to bring together what we hope is a proposal for adoption or a successful adoption of Flagstaff in motion later this month. And so I'm gonna hit some highlights of what's in the plan. But we do have the full documents and final design right now and are happy to get that to you if you're interested in seeing more. So really, Flagstaff in motion is designed to help us figure out the best way to provide mountain line services across the region. And I think in light of the conversation we just had is very much tied to what we might ask for in a future tax package. So I'll set the stage for that. This is a beginning. This is our best effort to say these are what we think the priorities are. But as we form a citizens commission to further look at it, they might change. The other thing I would just say is this is a plan that's a living document. And so we can't always predict the future. For example, the existing 5-year plan never contemplated the hospital moving south of town. So we recognize that they're living documents and they're not set in stone. So the order we're gonna go through, we'll talk about the projects and the vision and the next steps. So the status is we're here where the yellow is highlighted in stage 4. That's exciting for us. We've done all these other components to get to where we are today, including quite a bit of community involvement, 2 series of surveys. We did have a committee for a stakeholders committee that formed our citizens advisory committee to help us come up with recommendations and review the process with us. So a lot of input to date. And what is our vision? It is Flagstaff in motion, the transit vision. So real quick before I talk about what our vision is, I'm going to set some terms, and I will recognize that we also have some new board members or a new board member this month, so partly want to review terms for them. Frequency, that's how often the bus is coming. So if it comes every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes is kind of typical across our system for the most part. Span of service is the hours in which we run. So 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.-ish on weekdays and less on weekends. Peak hours, that's when we're running the most frequency. So our high frequency hours, and off-peak hours, we're running buses less often. And then kiss and ride is a term that we hear used for when parents or loved ones drive themselves somewhere and drop someone off at a bus stop on the way, and one person continues their trip in the car and the other person gets off. We see this a lot with the charter schools. Parents do this on their way to work. They drop their kid at a bus stop and continue on their way to work, and the kid takes the bus the rest of the way. So this map is an overview, and I'm going to go clockwise from the top, highlighting the major components here. And really the overall vision is that buses arrive more often to more places and for longer periods of time, Monday through Saturday. We didn't see a huge need for Sunday yet. And again, this is a 5-year plan, so maybe a future 5-year plan will look towards Sundays. But starting at the top, we want to make the route to deviation permanent. There's a lot of development happening on that hill, and we're bypassing it all. It's accessible, but it's not that easy. It would be much better if that deviation was the permanent routing. It's not a problem for us on the outbound, so towards the mall right now. But when we come into town, it is a significant deviation because you have to make a left at the top of the hill, go down to basis, come around the roundabout, come back out the top of the hill, and it puts us behind time for several hours, or it can. So we really want a way to make a left turn. We're looking for a capital improvement that would allow us to make a left turn off the mesa from the western side that could, without additional operating money, would allow us to make the deviation permanent. The second one there, going clockwise, we want to increase Route 7 off-peak frequency to 40 minutes. It's 20-minute frequency on weekdays. And so we want to move that to 40 minutes during the off-peak hours. It's currently at an hour. Continuing on, we want to increase frequency on Route 3 and 66 to 20 minutes. They both currently run at 30-minute service. We also want to increase their off-peak frequency to 30 minutes, and they're on hourly service currently. The 3 boxes at the bottom are all really about span of services, so they're not, you see they're not pointing at any routes there. One is late night trips for bus pass holders, maybe through taxi partnerships, Uber, Lyft partnerships. So getting people home, particularly if they've taken the bus to work for a late night shift or to the bars or something, we want to figure out how to get them back home. Longer off-peak evening service hours. So again, trying to get later at night. And then the other one is increased Saturday service level to match weekdays. So we do see much more ridership on Saturdays than we do on Sundays. And so we want to bump that up to match weekdays. So we really have a Monday through Saturday schedule and a separate Sunday schedule. Moving around the clock there, we want to add coverage to new areas, and specifically this is West 66, so out to Timber Sky and the vintage properties that are occurring out there, also down to the new NAH site, and then the airport is the key new areas for coverage. And then up at the top left, Route 5 is our only route that currently runs at hourly service, and that is a very difficult service to use if you need it. And so we really feel like we need to invest in Route 5 or abandon Route 5. This is kind of the conversations we have, and we'd rather try to invest than abandon and see where that goes. So investing in Route 5 to bring it up to 30-minute service levels. Other recommendations, this is just, we wanted to, there was a big event at this advance, I was gonna say the TAC, but that wasn't the right word, at the advance in October, where we talked about service improvements. And so for the most part, the recommendations of the TAC or of the advance have been carried forward. But there are a couple things that we've refined, and so we wanted to point that out. So we had, and it was because we gave you guys prescriptive things that you could negotiate, but we didn't give you the full spectrum, right? You had limited choices. So we modified some of the things that rose to the top. So the raw results in October were that we wanted to have 11 p.m. service Monday through Friday. There wasn't a midnight option. It otherwise jumped to like 2:30. But based on dialogues and feedback from surveys, we feel like the right answer is that's really the midnight service level, not just the 11 p.m. service level. On Saturday service, your option in front of you was 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then upon further discussion and review, we really felt like it was better to only have the 2 schedules and not create a whole 3rd schedule. Additionally, there was need there. So our recommendation is just to match weekday service. And then the other one that really changed is we talked about service outside the city limits with funding. And really, that was the priority of the advance, was to continue to use city sales tax to pay for city services and not services beyond that. But we felt like the plan was missing something if we were just silent on service outside of the city limits. And so we do recognize the need for some of those commuter services to Belmont, Donny Park, and Kachina Village, but we suggest that there's other funding sources to do that in the plan. A little bit about what does this do for us? This is our current access around the city in 15 and 30 minutes. And I'm gonna recognize that this map is really about coverage, is what it really is good at representing. It's not good at representing frequency. So at noon on weekdays, you can see you've got pretty decent coverage around town, but at 10 p.m. on a Saturday, you really can't get anywhere. So what does the plan do for us? You can see the currents on the left. Significant expansion, particularly on Saturdays, for access in the system. And there are some key expansions like the West 66 and the down to the airport and the hospital site that you see now included. Like I said, it doesn't represent all the frequency improvements very well, the way that this mapping works. And so I don't think it recognizes the benefits of increased service on 66 and 7 and 3 that we talked about for frequency. But I think it does show that there is better access throughout the community with the plan. We also set some guiding principles. We talked about this at the advance as well, how we have all these policies that are things for other people to do that weren't really our own tasks. So we set these guiding principles for successful transit and tried to simplify them. And we actually took this information from NAFTA, the National Association of City Transit Officials, and they have a great publication called Move That Bus. And these are from that Move That Bus publication. So it's really the guiding principle that transit's a public service and not a business, and keeping that in mind. Frequent bus service is important. That was the theme of the last 5-year plan. I think it's carrying forward into this 5-year plan. People have lives outside of 9 to 5, and I think we're seeing that in our span improvements, right? Is we want to see those frequency hours expanded. And that streets that work for transit are better for everyone. That's getting to some of those capital improvements in the way we design our roadway system. And then with that, we have a couple actions that we want to take. So we do want to seek new funding and partnerships to implement Flagstaff in motion. We think that these are needed improvements. So as we talked about, potentially a 2024 tax question, but we'll always be creative and seek as many funding solutions as we can. We want to include capital projects and planning for first last mile improvements. So really recognizing that bikes and pedestrians need to be able to get to the transit system for it to work. We do want to work on modifying the codes and standards of the city and ADOT and potentially the county if we get that far with our services. To better incorporate transit into the street design. That ties to the conversation we just had about what are the expectations of developers, what are the codes that we can change to, so that it's not always a negotiation, but it's just something that we do. And then also looking at the idea of asking our partner agencies to adopt our plan. So this is not something we've done before, and we often hear that, well, that's not our plan, so it's not enforceable. So we would like to consider taking this over to the city and other partners for adoption to give it teeth, particularly things like the map. There's maps of missing bus stops. If those were actually adopted by the city, it would be easier to get developers to implement them than to have to just negotiate and hope that you had a developer that sees the value of transit. So what are our next steps? So with the board, we'll seek adoption of the plan. We'll also talk about adoption of the plan with the partners. And so if anyone has feedback on that today, I think we're very interested in it. We'll then look to establish the Citizens Advisory Committee. We've been targeting around March to initiate a conversation or a group to start the conversations about a tax package that they could look and refine the recommendations of Flagstaff in motion throughout the fall, summer and fall. And by this time next year, we would have a proposal of what would be in a tax package. So that way, as the council starting to look at the 2024 ballot, there's a clear ask from Mountain Line about what that would look like. So that is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kate. Questions or comments for Kate? Dave?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm real excited to dig into this and look at it. I haven't had a chance to look at the full plan. Obviously, been following it and its development, and congratulations on getting this plan. So just a couple thoughts as you prepare to go, to work with the committee and go to the public. The principle that frequency equals freedom. Just a reminder that that was challenged by city legal staff as being advocacy and not information. And I think it's a key message that really, being hamstrung and not being able to have that message in the last tax campaign was detrimental. And I think it was wrong personally. So that might be a conversation to start early with city legal in terms of how can we craft this in a way that meets your expectations. The other, it's kind of a reminder from one of our surveys, and we asked people about funding for service outlying areas. And there's actually fairly decent support. Probably want to check my math on the funding, but I think I got it right. I think having that conversation about city residents supporting, in part, funding for transit outside the city limits, at least start the conversation and see where it goes and see if it can grow from there or maybe have some traction. And then adding to that, we have hired Sandra Tavel as to implement the creative local match. Another successful grant that you all wrote and submitted. And, I know we have Andy Bertelson on the line here, but, transit tax districts or something might be something that is explored to look at, how do we get the local county funding for one of those sources. So I'm glad that you guys had a section on that. I'm glad that some of the alternative scenarios that you evaluated included those. But having those and maybe having hope, perhaps an expectation that this is coming, can help the county direct some of its capital investments for that first and last mile. They do their area plans on a regular basis. They just finished the Donny Park area plan. Trails and sidewalks were a big part of those conversations. They do, I think, focus on their rural activity centers. But if we can start pointing more affirmatively to those activity centers as a future location for transit, that's more motivation to make that a priority for first and last mile investments as well. So thank you, and again, congratulations. I'm excited for you guys.
Thanks, Dan. Other comments or questions for Kate? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Jackie is up next with rider satisfaction survey results.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the TAC. I actually stood up and presented a podium to you guys in like 3 years, so I've never used this remote before, so apologies if I stumble a little bit. I'm already stumbling, I don't have any, go forward. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to present on our 2022 rider satisfaction survey. We last conducted this in 2018. Typically do it every other year for 2 years. But it's an in-person onboard survey. It didn't seem like the best thing to do during COVID, when we had service cuts and things were much different. And then we also found that trying to speak to people with masks on board, we actually did a survey as part of Flag 7 motion, and we spent most of the time going, what? So we decided to wait until things were back to quasi normal. We did it, we haven't done it since 2018. We operate in English and Spanish, and then there's also an online option. Some people are perhaps taking a short trip and can't complete the entire in-person survey while they're riding, so we do offer an online option as well. So you're looking at the surveys collected by route. So historically, when we've done this, our agency that conducts it has taken our ridership by route and done a proportional amount of surveys collected per route. We decided to change that up this year because that obviously our Route 10 ridership is historically a very significant part of our ridership. It's also a much different demographic from the rest of our riders. So it's when we do it proportionally, we're really skewing heavy towards a group of people that predominantly rides that route for free. And predominantly, not all, but rides only that route. And so it's just a much different audience. So we made the decision this year to make things a little more proportional to our other routes. And you can see in the next slide, the distribution of ridership, which is in the yellow color, sorry, Dave. And
I see him.
survey, the numbers of surveys collected, which is in the teal color. We did scale back on that Route 10 collection, just to get a more even look across the board at our riders. And we used to I used to present these results separately to you. Those who've been around for a while, we'd have a whole presentation on all the routes except Route 10, then a presentation on Route 10. This is going to be a combined presentation on all of our routes, including Route 10, but not skewed as heavily towards Route 10 as it has been in the past. So looking first at the rider satisfaction, this is on a 5-point scale, so that it's very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, neutral, somewhat dissatisfied, very dissatisfied. So you can see the mean ratings for
the overall, things that we've asked for. We did ask some new things. We try and change this up every, as things change a little bit in our service. So, cleanliness seemed to be an issue that, COVID that rose to the top. So, really happy to see that the people feel, confident in what we're doing with cleanliness. Customer service we added is just a general one. We had not asked that in the past. And then the real-time arrival app, we did switch our apps at some point during COVID, maybe pre-COVID, I can't remember, from using an app called Flag Ride to using the transit app for real-time arrival. And I will dig in a little bit. That is, you'll see that as one of our lower ones. I'm going to talk about that here in a few minutes. This is a pretty busy one. This is comparing the last 3 surveys that we have done. So the teal color at the teal bar at the top is 2016, the brown bar in the middle is 2018, the yellow gold bar at the bottom is 2022. Obviously, there's somewhere we can ask this question, so there is only 2022 data to present. But the bottom line really is that there's nothing alarming in here. We haven't significantly dipped in any one from 2018 to 2022 where we need to really need to dig in and figure out what's going on. They're all fairly consistent. Some are quite better. Looking at on-time performance, things along those lines. We look at the service hours one. I think that's the one where it's the lowest overall. And you just listen to Kate talk about the fact that that came up in Flagstaff in Motion, and we have a plan. Albeit a plan with no funding, but we have a plan to address those service hours, which we consistently hear is one of the biggest frustrations for our writers, excuse me. And then just digging in to kind of that very the very satisfied, overall, I think people are quite happy with our service. On-time performance, very satisfied on the lower ones here, but still ranked pretty high as far as things go. We all know traffic patterns in Flagstaff are a challenge, and it does impact our on-time performance. Our buses can't get around that traffic, unfortunately. If we get more people on the buses, we can hopefully reduce that traffic though. Hours of service is the other one that we've already spoken about. Is we understand that people want us to be out there more often. And then looking at the transit app. So this is one where we know this is an issue, and this is a deep behind the scenes thing that I won't go into too much detail. Their frustration is actually not with the transit app, it's with Verizon service in Flagstaff, combined with the some of the backend stuff we have with our fare collection and real-time arrival stuff that we have on the bus. I'm doing a very general overview, but we are working on it. It's an issue that is not super reliable right now. We've actually put out messaging to the public about it. And we are working on it to the best of our abilities. Some of it is not within our control. We're trying to figure out what is within our control and what is not within our control. So we are working on that. But the overall satisfaction, so this is those who are very satisfied and somewhat satisfied, nearly 90%, which is huge coming out of a time when we've had service cuts. A lot of our we had service cuts for a number of months for COVID. Now for staffing shortages, things have not been quote unquote normal for quite some time. So really happy to see this level of satisfaction given some of the challenges we've had with putting our best service on the road. So moving on from kind of the satisfaction to getting some more of the details that our planning team can use this. We use this a lot for things like Flagstaff in Motion. We actually got these results as busy as finishing up Flagstaff in Motion. So she was able to insert some of this into there, which is great. We also use it for grant applications and things along those lines. So looking at trip purpose, going to work is that first bar, nearly 40%. That's actually down 8% from our 2018 survey. So I think we're gonna typically when I give these presentations, there's little ebbs and flows, but things are fairly flat. This is the first year where I've definitely seen some more significant variations from survey to survey. And I think a lot of it is just coming out of that post-COVID world and seeing, and the survey was conducted in October of 2022. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So, just seeing I think some of the impacts that maybe COVID has had on our community and specifically our ridership. So I mentioned those going to work was down about 8%, and those going to college was up about 6.5%. So that could maybe indicate so, NAU students are maybe living more dispersed, and needing transportation to the campus where they're, not able to walk or bike, and they're more dispersed and need to ride other routes. We also have more, we have more college passes out there now, as far as like the Alara development, which is the new off-campus student housing next to Sawmill. Every student there is able to get a free Mountain Line transit pass to ride any route, not just Route 10. So, perhaps seeing some impacts from that. Shopping's up 5%, so we're not working as much, but we're shopping, so that's exciting. All right, so ridership tenure. So this is like, how long have you ridden Mountain Line? This one is a little bit crazy as far as the numbers go. So that number, that 31% who have ridden for less than 6 months, that is double that of 2018. In 2018, 16% of riders had ridden for less than 6 months. So I don't know if that is indicative of, once again, more college students riding, indicative of a post-COVID migration of people, are people coming back into the community that left for a while during COVID to go get jobs elsewhere? Unfortunately, I'm hypothesizing on all of this, but that was a really significant change in this data from year to year, going double. That number, that 21% who've ridden for 5 or more years, completely stable. That number was almost exactly the same in 2018. So the biggest change was in those first 2 numbers, the riders who've not been here as long. And I can only presume it has at least something to do with the kind of post-COVID world that we're coming out of. So then looking at reasons for riding. This is also nearly 65% say it's their only transportation, which is fairly consistent with 2018. The 2 that are a little different, this is really not that much different, but the environmental benefits, that was up about 3% from the last time we surveyed. And then to avoid traffic and or parking fees was also up about 2.5% from last time. So, I think seeing some improvement in those areas, everything else is fairly consistent all across the board. And then this one is also, it's basically a mirror image of 2018, how often people ride. So nearly 60% of our riders are riding 5 or more times a week. So we have a lot of really dedicated riders. I think as we move forward and move, what the city is calling the big shift, which is trying to get people to shift their patterns of behavior, I think we'll definitely be looking to try and increase those 1 to 2 and 3 to 4 times. That's one of the messages that we really try and get out there is we're not asking you to give up your car. We're not telling you we love you to, but we're not, in a community like Flagstaff, we know that might not be realistic. If you are a rider of choice, obviously, we have 65% of people who ride who don't have a choice. But for those who do have a choice, potentially, what can we do to encourage you to make a different choice a couple of times a week and perhaps increase some of those other numbers to try and get people, to out of their cars when they can, knowing that it's not realistic, perhaps that 5 or more times a week for people who are riders of choice. And then how do you get information? This is also really consistent with 2018, which I was surprised by. A few things are a little bit different, but most people are getting it, via our website, via mobile device. We still invest in making sure that our website is mobile friendly so that when people do access our website on a mobile device, they're getting easily getting the information that they need. But yeah, this is really similar. The one that's up the most is that Google, with maps spelled wrong, sorry. Google Transit mappers. So we'll fix that. That one was up the most, and it really underscores the importance of our, our IT folks of, we have the power to make sure that Google has the most up-to-date information on the services that we are offering. So it's part of all of our procedures when we make service changes, when we're unfortunately cutting service or we're putting service back in. It is part of our procedures to make sure that the feed that Google gets from us is up to date, so that as you can see, a good portion of people receive information that way. So the mobility alternative. So this is, if Mountain Line was not available, how would you have made the trip that you're making today? And 30% of people would have walked, or taken a wheelchair, most likely walked was the number one way. And then you look down the way, things like taxi, Uber, and Lyft, not
cost effective also in the, you know, if you try to take one of a taxi or Uber or Lyft recently, you know that it's also not the most convenient in this community right now. So definitely shows, you know, you have 16% of people who've driven themselves. It's a great thing to know that, you know, we've diverted 16% of those trips that would have otherwise been taken in our personal vehicle. And then, you know, you leave 8% of people who would potentially not have made that trip. So if it was something for medical care or, you know, school or work, like that's a big deal. So this is a new question that we asked. I don't really have any data to show you, to tell you from before. I really worked with the planning team. We had 4 years to hone the survey, so we really tried to ask some questions that would be more useful to the planning team as they do things. And so this was, we asked this one in a little bit different way this time, so there's not a lot of comparison, but it's about how you get to and from a bus stop. So, you know, 94, it was like, I think it was like 81 or 85% of people are walking, and then that rest were likely biking. I don't know how many skateboards, except by campus, are going through the rest of the streets of Flagstaff. And so, you know, good to see that 80% have a half a mile or less to travel to get to the bus stop. We talked a lot about those walk sheds and how important that is to, you know, try and get to the most people possible with a relatively reasonable walk, depending on someone's ability level. Okay, and this one really gets to Flagstaff promotion. So we had not asked this before. This is impact of service improvements on ridership. So the blue bar at the top is that would not change my usage. It would not make me ride any more, any less. The yellow at the bottom is I would ride more often. So if you made these service changes, I would likely ride more often. And as you can see, so things like more frequent service on Saturday, more frequent service on weekdays. These are things that you just saw Kate present in Flagstaff in motion as things that, you know, would hopefully move that needle in getting people to ride more often. So I won't go into all of them, but you know, you definitely see like different destinations. It's hard. These are people who are already riding the bus, so presumably we go to the destination that they, you know, need to serve. So it is, you know, we have limitations with this survey as far as, you know, it is of current riders and people that are on the bus. All right, employment status. So once again, apparently we're just not working. The employed full-time and part-time is down 7% from the last time we did this survey. The student number is up about 3%. We can't really compare that 70% of students attend NAU since we combined the results this time and didn't separate things out, but I would say that's probably pretty you know, similar. I also think there are some limitations with this survey as far as a surveyor, you know, is probably not going to walk up to a 11-year-old on the bus who's riding to and from basis to do the survey. So there are, you know, I think with in-person surveys, there are some limitations to that. And then if you look at the age, you know, just some minor little things that are different, that the group that's 25 to 34, that's up 6%. And then the 45 to 64 is down 4%. And I do think that could have to do with COVID. I think, you know, our older population is probably a little more health, you know, COVID conscious and perhaps making different choices about not being in congregate and group settings like a bus. So I think that could explain that. And then this is really the household income. So this is, I know that our planning team does use things like this. We did ask some more demographic information that I'm not presenting, but this is used in a lot of our grant applications, excuse me. And you can see that we definitely are serving an audience that is heavily impacted by gas prices, inflation, you know, things along those lines. When you're talking about, you know, nearly 75% of our riders are making less than $40,000 a year. That's and we know what it costs to live here. So we, you know, hopefully providing a valuable service to those people. And then we ask, you know, if you have access to a vehicle, and those without access, so that's nearly 72% who did not have access to a vehicle for this trip, was actually an increase of 12% over when we did this in 2018. So you know, I can only hypothesize on what to attribute that to. I think it, you know, some to do with gas prices and the cost of owning a vehicle. Perhaps some people have just can't swing that, and when, you know,
you look at housing costs and transportation being your two biggest costs, and when you need a roof over your head, something has to go, and oftentimes that is a vehicle. So that one did increase quite a bit over the last time we did the survey. Oops, sorry. There we go. And that is what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jackie? Dave?
Just a couple observations and comments. So when you're dealing with percentages, just be a little cautious that, well, if work went down, reasons, work went down, everything else is gonna go up just as a result. So it doesn't necessarily indicate a trend other than that one percentage. And just along those lines, the number who were unemployed has gone down, which it's gonna correlate to the number who are riding for work purposes. And then kind of the last thing, you mentioned, the income as being very important for grants. And it showing a line for median income on there or poverty level, just might help emphasize that.
Okay, thank you.
But it's a great survey. I really like the questions that you added to it. I really think that provides great insight to, rider experience.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to not have year-over-year information to, you kind of balance that, like you want to be able to show things year to year, but we also want to make sure we're actually getting relevant information that we can use, so.
Other comments or questions for Jackie? Anyone online?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Just as a reminder, progress reports are in the agenda that was sent out for folks to kind of read on their own. If they have any questions, you're welcome to ask them now, but we're not going to go through the actual progress reports. There's the Caspar intersection grant update, the FY24 meetings, delegation of authority and summary. Well, Heather will probably give us do you want to touch on some current events?
Sure, be happy to touch on current
Thanks.
events. So I will start by sharing some work anniversaries. I have 2 slides here. Sheldon Yazzie joined us about a year ago to round out our HR team and has been instrumental in helping us with our staffing shortage issue, which we're going to talk a little bit about today as well. He's very focused on our recruitment and our new employee orientation and has been a great addition to our team. Robert Helbers joined our facilities team 8 years ago. I have been here 21 years now, and Jim Wagner, operations director, as he would fondly say, he's a retread, and this current employment stint has been 17 years. He was here when I started 21 years ago.
How many of those years does he actually work though?
Too bad he's not.
I'm sorry, excuse me, but I'm going to stand up now.
Couple others, Rachel Scala joined our operations team 4 years ago as an operator. She was promoted to operations supervisor within the last couple of months. Jerry Lewis is a trans operator with 7 years. And Josh Stone, our management services director, has been here 4 years, started out in our accounting division. A couple other announcements that I have that I'll share. We are returning to full service on January 16th. I'm very pleased to say that. I know the public will be very happy to hear that. We are not without staffing challenges. I have Jim glaring at me in the back of my head. I know we are still short on drivers, but we are not where we were a year ago. And so that is the good news. And we're glad to be returning to full service on January 16th. We still have 4 employees in training that will help round out those staffing numbers, but we also are facing a couple of retirements from some of our staff. So some are coming, some are going, and we'll continue working towards our next training group. We do have 2 promotions. I don't know if you've noticed Dave Doss, who was on the screen earlier. Dave has been in our operations division for just over a year, I believe, I can't remember his exact anniversary, but he recently took the position as Assistant Operations Manager. Most of you will remember Randy Biles, who left us about a year ago. Dave has taken a very similar position to really help Jim out and stabilize our operations division. We're very excited to have him in that position. And another operator, Joseph Tyree, has been promoted into our supervisor group. So those are two promotions I'd like to share with you. A couple of just general announcements and events that we have going on. It's so hard to control two computers. January 12th at 5:30 p.m. at the Murdoch Center, we will be having a public open house to talk about the civic space at the DCC. So it'll be the different aspects of that space. If you're interested, please let us know. We'll share those details with you. And of course, bring back a report on that after the meeting. We are in conversation with a new housing development on Zuni near Lone Tree about a bus stop. So this is back to that developers and how do they contribute. And so we do have a bus stop gap and we're looking at a way to help resolve that. And then the federal budget, in case you are not aware of this, the federal budget did pass recently and it does include robust funding for transits. We're very excited about the opportunity that we may see in our apportionments, but also in competitive application opportunities for our capital needs. Mountain Express did start just after Christmas, and we have provided 3,500 trips in the first week of service. We are now doing just weekends through February, and we'll provide, of course, an end of service report later this year. We had our holiday party on December 14th. It was at our downtown connection center. We have found our staff is fond of food trucks. And so we bring a food truck in, staff are able to order what they want from that menu and then congregate together. It was a toasty 36 degrees in the parking lot at the DCC. And we appreciate our facility staff who set up tables, chairs, and heaters so that we could all sit together in the sunshine and enjoy that holiday meal. DCC is at 75% plans. We continue to work towards construction and right now are working on moving out of the comfort station as that building will need to be demolished in the coming months. So starting to really see some boots on the ground activity associated with the DCC. The planning division has been reorganized. I don't know if you noticed, Lizzie had a new title. She's now our strategic performance planner, focusing on developing and tracking key performance indicators. And we're going to hear a lot more about that in the coming months. Estella remains our mobility planner, but is taking on more transit planning duties that Lizzie did in the future. So just a little shift there. And Lyra, our associate planner, will be creating some capacity for Estella with some of those new activities with grants and continue to manage mobility management. We did go to Gillig. I didn't. Our fleet team went to the Gillig factory in December to see our new bus. So the bus is actually built. We have pictures of it. It doesn't look that different than our existing. Unfortunately, it's not been scheduled for delivery as there are still some part issues, but we're getting very close and we're very excited to see it off the line and constructed. It will arrive with a couple of things sitting on seats that our team will install when the rest of the parts come. And so looking forward to that unveiling in the future. It's our first electric bus. Sorry, should have been more clear. Yes. Yes, very excited to see that come to Flagstaff. And the last update, John Mathis, our IT manager, has been working with state resources and we've received a cyber readiness grant, which really continues the different support services that we have in place that look at cyber risk, like training for employees, but we've managed to shift that cost from our cost to the state, and it will result in about a $5,000 savings per year. So small, but a start, and I congratulate him on that effort. That's all of the current events I have to share today.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
If there are no other comments or questions, our next TAC meeting is Thursday, February 2nd at 10 a.m. Being adjourned.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.